here are the very, very beginning moves for tap class. So if you're just starting out and you don't know any of the names of the most basic moves, here's something to help you out. We're going to start out with a stamp. A stamp is where your whole foot goes down to the floor all at once and sticks there. Just like that. You can do stamps moving forward, moving backwards, or you can stamp in place. Very much like a stamp, but not quite the same, is a stomp. A stomp bounces. Think of it like if you tried to jam your foot down onto a trampoline, it would bounce back up. So a stomp looks something like that. Alright, so a stomp, you can't really go much of anywhere with it, but you can do some pretty cool stuff like any sort of little combination that has stomps in it. They can be fun. Alright, next, well, a dig. A dig, it takes its name similar to the movement you would make when you're digging with a shovel. You want to dig your toe into the ground. So what you want to avoid is you want to avoid having a straight leg and just kind of thumping it backwards. There's not much sound you can get from that. What you're going to get a really nice good sound from is from pressing your foot downwards into the floor. That's a dig. A toe, traditionally, is just the tip of the toe. It kind of sounds like it should be the ball of your foot, but it's not. Traditionally, just the tip of your toe is a toe. There's lots and lots of things you can do with a toe. You can even do a toe stand if you want to when you get a little more advanced. So toes can be a pretty fun move. Of course, there is the ball of the foot. And a heel drop, which is just your heel coming down. Notice I'm missing a tap on this guy, so it tends to not be quite as loud. A heel drop can also be done if you're standing on one foot. You can pop your heel up and down to make a heel drop. Alright. Next, we're going to have some brushing motions. If you take the toes of your foot, your toe tap, and brush it forward on the floor, that's called a brush. Creative, I know. So to get a good sound on the brush, you really want to pull your foot a little bit behind you and try to raise your toes up as much as you can. I know it's hard with those stiff little shoes, but if you have more expensive shoes like I do, you can raise your toes up a little bit, pull way up high, and then as you take them forward, slap them down so that you're brushing the floor with a nice crisp sound. If you reverse the brush and make it go backwards, it's sometimes called a backwards brush, but also known as a spank. To get a good spank, flex your foot up really high, and as you come down to the floor, smack it nice and sharp, and then pull your toes up back behind you. So again, just going for a nice sharp sound. There's another brushing motion, but this one, you finally get to use the heel of your foot a little bit. And this is called a scuff. A scuff is where you flex your foot up nice and high, but instead of trying to hit with the toes, you're going to hit with your heel. Alright? Another motion that is not a brush, but that we're going to need here in a little bit, is called a tap. If you put your foot out in front of you and flex it up, kind of like you just finished a scuff, well, you can take your toe and tap it down to touch the floor. This is called a tap or sometimes a nerve tap. What you want to avoid is you want to avoid using your whole leg. If you're using your whole leg to make that tapping sound, you're using way too much energy and you won't be able to speed it up enough. You want to just be using your ankle to make the tapping motion happen. Now that we have some of our brushes, we can put them together to make a couple other moves. So the first move would be called a shuffle. It consists of a brush forward and a spank back. Brush forward, spank back. That's a shuffle. You can also do shuffles syncopated. Now those are a little bit trickier. here, maybe more intermediate. But in order to make a good sounding syncopated shuffle, you're going to just kind of let your leg flop, your foot flop on the end of your leg. And lower it down towards the floor. And just relax those muscles and just let it kind of snap back. Now this can be a little hard on your knee if you practice it for a long time. So just practice them for short amounts of time. Flop, 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 flop. If you try to control this motion too hard, you can't get it fast. So for a syncopated shuffle, just let those muscles flop. But for an even shuffle, you can control it very nicely. All right, up next would be a flap or a slap. Very small difference, but I'll explain it. So this is where we need that tap that we looked at before. A flap is a brush forward and then a tap of the foot down to the floor. Let's try that again. A brush forward and then a tap of the foot down to the floor. Now, if it's a slap, S-L-A-P, then you don't put weight on it. You can just pick that foot right back up. If it's a flap, F-L-A-P, you actually step onto the foot. Do I use those words precisely every time? No. A lot of times I just call either one a flap, and you'll see that happen a lot. But just so that you know the difference. Next is a scuffle. A scuffle is kind of like a shuffle, but with a scuff. So remember, the scuff is where you hit with your heel, and then a shuffle is where you go forward and back. So what we're going to do is we're going to go forward, hitting with our heel, and back, hitting with our toes. So a scuff and a spank. Scuff forward, spank back. Heels forward, toes back. Tiptoe runs are something that you might find useful at some point. Theo, could you move to one side, sweetie? Just go on up onto those tiptoes. Just try to make sure that you're making some nice, clear sounds rather than trying to be quiet or making draggy sounds. You want to have some nice, clear taps. And two more things that might be helpful to you when you're trying to put moves together. A hop and a leap. A hop is where you're standing on one foot, jump up into the air, and land on that same foot. A leap is where you start on one foot and land on the other foot. You'll see hops when you're doing the Irish. You'll see leaps when you're doing the shuffle off the buffalo. So there are some basic moves and their names if you are just getting started and need to learn those things.